Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3 p.m., and we are delighted to have you join us as we kick off yet another insightful session on connecting the dots. First and foremost, we extend our gratitude to our esteemed speakers for their participation in this panel discussion. Dr. Brilliant SK, EVP and Chief People Officer at Times Pro, Mr. Srinath Guru Rajarao, ex Senior VP HR at Simple Energy, Mr. Shamant S.N., Director at Rakuten India Enterprises Private Limited, and Mr. Vivekananda Kadukuntla, Learning Lead at Pega. A warm welcome to all. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on this insightful topic, Talent Without Borders, Managing Global Teams in a Location Agnostic World. To know more about HRA and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. I am pleased to introduce our moderator for today's session, Vivekananda Kadukuntla, who will be guiding us through the discussion with his insights and expertise. Vivek is a seasoned learning and development leader with over 2 decades of experience across global organizations. As the learning lead at Pegasystems, he drives innovative, high impact learning strategies and empower teams across regions. A certified change leader and recent graduate of the prestigious Future CHRO program at ICB, Vivek is passionate about building a culture of continuous learning and unlocking human potential through purposeful development. To know more about Vivek, you can follow him on LinkedIn. The link has been shared in the chat window. We are delighted to have you today. Over to you, Mr. Vivek.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Faisal, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Vivek. And by the way, on a side note, I do see a few people waiting in the lobby. I'm sure the admin is taking care of that, but are they allowed and are they live on the call if you want to quickly check on that?
Sure.
And yes, I'm thrilled to welcome you all to this insightful panel discussion hosted by HR Association of India. A very big thank you to the entire team of HRAI as well as some of the people that we normally interact to put this together, Faisal, Kalpana, Shyam, etc. They have been working really hard in bringing together thought leaders and practitioners to explore the future of work as well. So it's an honor to moderate today's discussion. Coming to the topic, talent without borders, managing global teams in a location agnostic world, I think it couldn't be more timely. As remote and hybrid work models have become the norm since the pandemic, we all know, all the organizations are experimenting, learning, moving back and forth with the different models. But organizations are no longer bound by geography when it comes to hiring and collaboration. We do have a large, number of organizations trying to work across the borders as well. But when we consider this freedom, I think it also comes with some complexity. Some of the questions that pop in our mind are, how do we build trust across the continents? How do we preserve this culture without the shared spaces? We are all used to driving to office, having lunch in cafeteria and aspects like that, taking coffee breaks together, taking a walk maybe sometime in the morning or afternoon. But how do we also rethink mentorship, career growth, and equity in a borderless world? All these are important questions, and we'll explore these questions and more with three exceptional leaders who bring diverse perspectives from HR, digital transformation, and global business strategy as well. So let me introduce the three panel members for today. Let's start with Dr. Brilliant SK, EVP and Chief People Officer from Times Pro. Dr. Brilliant is a champion and performance driven culture, prioritizing learning centric approaches in every operational and quality improvement initiative. With a strategic focus on talent development, he brings very strong capable teams to support the expanding business landscape. He is a Gallup certified strengths coach and Marshall Goldsmith certified executive leadership coach. He was conferred the top 10 global influential CXO awards in 2024. Congratulations, Dr. Brilliant, for that recognition. We are meeting for the first time as part of this panel discussion, and great to have you on this panel today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's next welcome Srinath Gururaj Rao. He is a seasoned HR leader with over 25 years of diverse experience across manufacturing, IT, telecom, media, and banking sectors. He has held leadership roles at renowned organizations including Tech Mahindra, Capgemini, and Nextwell Inc., where he consistently drove impactful HR strategies and business aligned transformation. Most recently, he served as Senior Vice President HR at Simple Energy, where he led digital HR innovation, leadership development, and workforce planning. Srinath has been recognized by Forbes, the Great Manager Institute, the World HRD Congress, and Mercer for excellence in AI driven HR practices. He has also authored six HR technology IPs and remains committed to building agile, high performing cultures through strategic people leadership. Welcome, Srinath. Looking forward to your insights in this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Vivek, and thank you everybody for taking your time out.
Thank you. And the third panel member we have with us to share his insights is Shamant SN. He's the director of New and Emerging Business, Rakuten, India. He's a bilingual leader, fluent in Japanese, with over 26 years of experience in digital transformation and business development across Japan, Israel, and APAC. His expertise spans industrial automation and social infrastructure, including sectors like intelligent transportation, energy, water, and geospatial sciences. Currently, Director of New and Emerging Business at Rakuten India, he drives innovation and growth through multicultural collaboration. Previously at Hitachi, he led large scale bids and techno commercial projects with government and enterprise stakeholders. He's earned a lot of accolades, such as India's top 50 great manager in 2020, top 100 people managers in 2023, and multiple leadership awards in 2024. He's also a certified NLP master practitioner and a life coach. He's passionate about mentoring, teaching, and fostering industry academia partnerships as well. And looking forward to learn more from your experience and wisdom today. Welcome, Shamant.
Sure. Thank you, Vivek, and thank you everyone for being a part of this particular enticing HRAI platform. Thank you.
Okay. With that, let's jump into some discussion and ask a few questions, learn some insights through these experiences of the esteemed panel that we currently have. An audience, I see quite a few online today. If you have any questions, please share them through the chat. Towards the end of this conversation, we'll spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes to answer any of those questions to the best of our ability. So let me start with Dr. Brilliant first. As long as we are talking about talent across borders, let's say, working culturally beyond borders, etc., what do you think is the new handshake for building trust across continents? I find that as a very foundational or fundamental element, but what do you think is the best way to ensure that we continue to build a trust and then work together?
मेरे पिया गए रंगून किया है वहां से टेलीफोन to FaceTime. The world is actually shrunk today. And when you look at the definition of continents, I would say for us, HR professionals and talent acquisition leaders across, it would be anything that operates out of your office premises. Right? That's the rate of change that we have seen. And when I think of what we've done at Times Pro and how we build that handshake to build trust, I would say we operate in what I have classified as a tailored hybrid program. Now, tailored hybrid program is not one size fits all that everyone will ask for it, but we realized post COVID that yes, work can happen outside of office, but there are some core functions which require you to be in office because there is a lot of interactions across, there is, I would say, people intensive elements. So we said, let's think about people who need to operate from office 100%, people who can operate out of office 100%, and then teams which need that flexibility to operate hybrid or in a mode where they come to office at least one day a week. Now, what did it solve for me is help fill the talent gap, most important. While it started in COVID, we had to scale. We have not crossed continents, but we have boundaries across the Indian states which means that I have someone in a remote place called Jharsuguda to someone who's operating from Pune to someone who's operating from Calcutta without an office, and it's working. What we've said is trust is the one thing which will be non-negotiable. And the reason is simple. It helps build transparency, it brings consistency, and most important, what I would call as intentional engagement. And it is the one thing that can help us build that handshake. What can we do simply? What we have tried and tested is one, virtual stand-ups. We know that sales team get that energy during stand-up meetings. So we said, let's create virtual stand-up. We have online lunches where you bring your own device was a concept. We say bring your own lunch, put on the video and we'll be on lunch virtually. What it did is it helped break that monotony for someone who's operating from the same work environment to give that comfort to say, okay, there's something different. The challenge that we saw was with onboarding as well. Someone operating from home, not finding a cohort with whom he or she can talk to, created a sort of a challenge. So we said, let's work on a buddy system, which can help foster that sense of belongingness. And most important, you may have a meeting starting at, let's say, 3, just like we logged in about 2:45. We ask people to join early, have some informal catch up, and then you move on. The biggest shift that we brought in to bring that trust and build that trust was focus on outcome based accountability rather than visibility, because you can be on screen 24 by 7 but give zero productivity. Productivity over visibility helped us multiple levels. One, flexibility to start, but make sure that you're accessible. So I'm not putting pressure, but at the same time it helped create what we call as trust sprints, which means
Right.
I trust you completely and it's up to you. Integrity, short, focused communication, build it, shut it, forget it, right? The one good old ad of Hero Honda was there and it's working like precision. And that's one thing which I'm proud of to say. The tailored hybrid mode helped us create this handshake and we are seeing some success. But yes, I would still place on record, there's nothing that can take the human touch away from this. Over to you, Vicky.
Thank you, Brilliant. Thanks a lot for that. A lot of elements that you touched upon are very, in sync with what we do at Pega and our ideology too. We declared that we are a camera first organization. So any scheduled meeting, people
Oh,
should definitely show up or make
like
an
it.
effort to do that and explain why, if for some reason I'm not able to come on camera. We also have a very flexible model, very similar to that you talked about. We call that as a how we work program, and we classify depending on the role, depending on the location, etc. If they are completely remote or hybrid or in office all the time, etc. But yeah, outcome based accountability can sum up and then say we are all part of the organization for a reason. As long as that is taken care, I think everything else in a way falls in place. But
Absolutely.
given,
And I'm taking that camera first for sure. Thank you for that.
thank you. And given how important this trust is as a foundation to any team, I would like to also hear that from Srinath. If you can share any insights and throw a little more light into how your experience has been and anything else that the audience today can take away to say, how do we ensure that we build the trust and continue to work across borders?
Sure, I think a great question. Brilliant has touched upon very vital aspects of tailoring and personalizing the aspect of trust within an organization's setup. We did something similar. When I personally look at the word trust, the beautiful image of a mother and a child interacting and the child jumping to the mother without any hold back and just believing in the fact that the mother will hold the child even when it is falling is something that is the desirable or the aspired state of trust, right? And when we move on to the other side of the spectrum, where a corporate setup brings in a lot of professional commitments, aspirations that shake together in terms of building something together, is another part of it. So we journey from there to the state where the mother and child interacts. How do you build uh, such culture in an organization? The organization conceives and deploys employees, right? We work between timelines, through filters in the digital mode now, and the drops in the Wi-Fi and the faces not popping up, and hoping that it does show up, right? Like structured setup, I think activities I am reminded of when we build trust. One is where we said we will ensure that the experience lasts the aspirations in an individual when they are onboarded. At Simple Energy, we ensure that every new hire, to be able to bind and bond better within the organization, they go through the entire modus of going through the manufacturing facility, testing our vehicles, riding on the vehicles, and experiencing firsthand what it is and how they are part of that whole system. So this physical handshake, irrespective of where they are located, has helped us build a very integrated workforce in terms of understanding each other better and being there for each other. Two, I'm also reminded of the fact that we ran a campaign a few years back, which called Zero Follow Up Heroes. Right, you interact a lot on the digital mode, like engineering teams, your supply chain teams. So how do you ensure that people are celebrating that zero follow up? So I get my work done with this person without having to follow up even a single time. So we celebrated that. We created a reward architecture within that framework, and ensure that people who are rewarded are standing out, and there is some trait that is being highlighted and showcased as a cultural entity and a very integral part of the whole delivery system. I think these two stand out very, very strongly, and I would say, irrespective of the modes of technology that we use, trust is very fundamental in terms of getting together and delivering something which is valuable to the organization, to the self, and accomplishing those goals. So I think it is very vital, no matter how we build it, but it is essential that we build it, and that is about the trust.
Wonderful. Thank you, Srinath, for all that insight. And as we are all learning from each other, I'm making a note of zero follow-up culture as well. We do celebrate a great job done. We do celebrate teams and individuals together, but I think this should definitely be a very prominent category to highlight, encourage in that element as well. So thank you very much for that response.
Thanks, Vivek.
Now, let's move to Shamant. Given his experience in especially working with the Japanese culture, the question I'm very curious to learn the response to and his experience is how can leaders preserve the subtle cultural signals and shared rituals that form team identity when members have never physically met? And Japanese cultures is definitely very unique across the world. There are learning and development programs that title how do we work with the Japanese, let's say,
True.
with your experience and insight, you might be able to share certain lessons that we can all take away and ensure that we implement those at the organization as well.
Sure. I mean, thanks a lot, Vivek, for the great question. First of all, especially when we talk about the Japanese organizations, I think we are. I think in the fellow panelists talked about the FaceTime. I think Brilliant actually talked about that. Primarily, Japanese prefer to have that particular FaceTime. And when we talk about a FaceTime, they basically either they expect somebody to travel to Japan, or probably they would like to be in India and have that particular FaceTime, and then have those particular meetings or the cultural nuances more discussed in person. But I think COVID was a changer. I mean, I think all businesses, I mean, had to go virtual, and so was even Japan. And of course, I think we could traditionally see the a geography which never experienced a virtual kind of an ecosystem, especially in the cultural or in the business nuances, had to basically phenomenally get into a virtual mode. And especially for the organization like Rakuten, my organization Rakuten, added to that is 40% of our workforce is actually non-Japanese workforce, even in Japan. So I think we have people from around 55 different nationalities, and being an early adopters of English as one of the languages that is spoken even in Japan. Probably the very early adopters were, of course, still Japanese is very much prevalent, but English is something that we adopted as an official language. Key thing is, as a part of our culture, especially when we have the virtual team sitting across and who are never physically met. Few things that I would like to touch upon is we have something called as the cultural element of Asakai. Asakai is, of course, I think we there's like the cultural ritual of the Monday morning or the formal meetings that we have. In this case, what we do is every Monday morning, or if Monday is an holiday, then it's basically Tuesday. The chairman of the organization actually comes and he addresses the global ecosystem. Of course, we have something called as the Japan Asakai, then we have APAC, and similarly we have the India Asakai. So the chairman himself is there in present. I mean, he is addressing, of course, in Japan, he's probably addressing a 2000 member kind of an audience, but at the same time, geographically, everyone is logged in and primarily listening to him, where he is actually sharing uh, uh, the aspects about the business, about the cultural values, and then there is a chapter reading that he has also done on the book that he has actually penned called Business Though. So this becomes so primarily this creates what we called as a one Rakutanian culture, or basically disseminating the culture, the cultural integrity in the diversified in the virtual environment. And secondly, we also have a cultural element called Shugi. Shugi is basically one of the corporate ethos that we basically follow. It's actually a deeply integrated cultural value ecosystem of Japan, which is core to what Rakuten is. And that is something irrespective of whether it's a new hire or probably an intern or a senior leadership, they need to undergo that particular Shugi immersion, or we call the cultural immersion, to get that particular integration into that particular one Rakutanian culture. So this is something that we have actually seen pretty much working for us, and where in spite of the team members being being pretty diverse and of course who have never met, but because of creating this particular one Rakutanian culture through the Shugi elements, and at the same time the Asakai kind of an ecosystem that we have built in, we are able to bring in a strong integration of the virtually diversified teams across the geographies.
Got it. Thank you very much for that insight, Shamant. I've been part of an organization like that where Monday morning, 9 o'clock used to be the leadership call. And at the time, we definitely used to not like it as much. It's a first thing in the Monday, why do we want to, catch up on some of these elements, etc. But the overall culture and the tone it sets from a leadership point of view, we were able to only appreciate, after a few instances, and then started looking forward to that. And when somebody is willing to share that message across the organization for 2000 plus employees, I think I can see how valuable that cultural signal can be, that shared ritual can be. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Now let me go back to Dr. Brilliant and ask about a little bit in terms of mentorship. When we talk about mentorship and the borderless talent ecosystem, let's say, what does it look like, and can it be as powerful without proximity? We are more of a sit across the table and have a chat, ask me any questions, feel like a friend and be comfortable kind of cultures, right? So how does this typically work borderless or across the continents?
So, Vivek, I'll go back to what you said, camera first. So, the generation today is digital first. They have not seen anything beyond digital. So, I think, yes, if I look at mentoring as an ecosystem, irrespective of how it is, it can be effective and I would say powerful if we structure it and make sure that it is scalable. We've heard about this long ago, and I think one of the projects that I did when I was in college was on reverse mentoring. Today, the new generation actually is mentoring some of the old timers like us in terms of getting digital insights. How do I be, uh, I would not call it as digitally savvy, but adapt digitalization as a part of life because we all know how to use machines. That's a given. So it's about how do we leverage all of that, and I see the acceptability and adaptability across the leadership team. Uh, My CEO used to always say that, we have been in this ecosystem for 10 years, so probably we are blinded by the blinders that a horse normally has. So let's look at life from a young person's perspective. So that reverse mentoring has really worked very well. What we also tried and attempted in this ecosystem is virtual mentoring, which is based on need. Uh, Many a times when you say that, here's a mentor for you, people look at us with a sense of suspicion to say, is my performance an issue? Why are you giving me a mentor? So we had to break that by making mentoring as a part of life, right? For example, uh, today, given the borderless ecosystem, team managers had a challenge to even engage their teams virtually. So we started small. It's not about doing big things, Vivek, and I take pride in the fact that we believe that small things make a big impact, and it has really worked. When there was a need, we identified it, worked jointly with the managers to create those small mentoring sessions instead of giving a calendar. And the
Wonderful.
second level, which is not exactly mentoring, but what I would call as squad working. Now, spread across geographies, it's very difficult for anyone to come together and work in an ecosystem, right? You can just say that I'm camera first, I'll keep everything here and I'll start working, but it doesn't help. So, what we did is we created small groups of projects where we had people from, let's say, an ecosystem which was purely online. And that helped us work like a one team together. So, the mentoring came from within the team. So no one was identified as a mentor. It emerged as a process. So that helped us solve. I would say proximity matters, but what matters more than anything else is the purposeful connections that we build. And when we use these three options, I think that's something which has given us a level of success. Over to you.
Wonderful, Dr. Brilliant. I think it's the overall intent. How do you approach and how do you want to ensure that the models are successful? A lot of the other operational aspects will definitely fall into place. And when you were talking about that mentoring model, I am thinking about one initiative that we run at Pega. We call this as Shido. Shamanta, I'm sure you are probably very popular with all the Japanese terms that we probably throw around loosely. Excuse me if I'm not using it
No, no,
correctly, but
no.
this is called as
Thank
speed mentoring, where we have a panel of senior leadership team members available for an hour. And we can invite anybody from the organization in numbers of 20 to 30, let's say. And after every 5 minutes, we did that virtually, we did that in person when the leadership team travels to India. After 5 minutes, we ring a bell and they move to the next chair. As in, you get to talk to another person for 5 minutes and then ask any question, ask me anything kind of element. So, in about an hour, you typically get to meet, let's say, 5 to 7 senior leadership team members across the organization and ask certain things directly that you have been thinking about. So, speed mentoring is not directly supporting somebody as part of the career growth. It need not be, a lengthy
Okay.
mentoring session all the time. And I do agree on that mental block as well, because that's most common for training too. When I send an invite to a group of people to say, next week we are starting a training program, one of the first questions is, did I do anything wrong? Or
Ah.
is there anything that is not
So
up to the
true.
mark from my side and therefore I'm put into a training program? So appreciate your response, and we can definitely exchange notes and continue to strengthen that overall
Definitely.
initiative. So thank you. With that, let me move to Srinath one more time. And this time, I'm curious about the overall career progression models. How do the career progression models change when moving up is not equivalent to or no longer means moving to HQ? The headquarters are more often than not in a Western world, and we are all GCCs, very successful, adding a lot of impact. But somebody in the US more often than not calls the shots as well. So how do we deal with the overall progression or promotion related elements there?
Excellent question. I think very pertinent too. Career progression, the ladders are no more ladders anymore. It is individual's aspiration aligned to the organization's goals. As simple as that. Today's workforce, as per McKinsey's survey, says that role clarity, flexibility, and development objectives that an organization meets towards an individual's growth is more weighted upon by the individual rather than the traditional ladders and titles and so on and so forth. I'm reminded of a very classic example of Jack Welch in 1963 when he was contesting for the CEO's post. There were two or three candidates that were shortlisted, and he was the only one who was not from the HQ. And his biggest worry was, will I be chosen because I am not from the HQ? And he comes with a background of blowing up a huge chemical factory, the roof of which was blown up because he was experimenting on some chemicals. So with that background, he still comes, and with the confidence he wins. I think that very raw energy, focus, and discipline towards one's skills, mastering the skills, and having a presence in your work which speaks for itself, traditionally will definitely help in one meeting their aspirations to the objectives set. So I don't think the proximity to HQ or proximity to leadership will influence overly in today's world, because since everything is digitized and everything is overly visible too, right? So you can't have people just by influence moving up the career ladders or moving towards certain goals which are not worth it. Though we always have some bad apples, so I think models have moved away from those. We are more concentrated on skills and the competencies that one brings to the table with the energy, focus, and discipline. I would call it the EFD triad, which always works. So whoever has that wins, and irrespective of the visibility is now a given. It's a fundamental architecture infrastructure in every organization. So digitally everything is captured now. So there is nothing that you can hide or go below the shadows where things are not visible. So I think those are the important facets here.
Wonderful, Srinath. I think the term that comes to my mind is jungle gym or career gym. When you talk about it's no longer a ladder, it can be in every position as well. And that's true, especially if the employee's aspiration is met and they are aligned to the organizational goals. I think who plays what role and what is the position in that pyramid that we're talking about becomes less relevant. I'm sure culturally, what do I say when people ask me what I do at the organization still continues to be a valuable, a persona that we tend to carry. But internally, for us to be content and then create an impact within the organization, that definitely adds a lot of value. And Jungle Gym typically talks about the same concept, right? You pick a role that aligns with your aspirations and then you move. It can be horizontal, it can be vertical, it can be changing domains and departments as well. So, a wonderful element that can really help us to talk about career progression. Now, let me go back to Shamant one more time. And this time, Shamant, any examples that you can provide, especially about cultural misunderstandings that happen only in a borderless workplace? And is it possible for them to be addressed? Is it possible for us to leverage them into learning opportunities? But any examples that you came across in your, career that can help us to learn a few lessons from?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And especially when we are in a borderless economy, and in fact, when we are talking across the cross borders, one of the key things, primarily East and the West. I mean, of course, India, when we try to interact with the eastern part of the geography, and especially with Japan, I think it's one of the key things what I have also observed in terms of some sort of a cultural misunderstanding can be the communication styles, because especially when we are talking about the communication, if it's a face-to-face communication, I think we generally, of course, just like the Westerners, they're pretty direct on the face, and I think we either it's a break or it's a go or a no go, right? And that's where the discussions to end. But especially in a traditional Japanese economy, or when we are trying to deal with the East, and one of the key things is how do I actually understand the subtle no, or primarily because one is the verbal communication, the other aspect is basically the non-verbal communication that basically happens through the facial cues, and also primarily the cues that basically come through the body language aspect of it. Probably in a physical ecosystem, it's relatively more easier, but when probably you're connected in a virtual world, and you primarily are interacting on Zoom or probably on some other form of a web meeting, how do you actually understand those particular subtle laws? Or how do you interpret those particular body language and the facial cues, which basically are an ensemble of what they actually want to say in terms of the communicating across to the other person. This is one area where a lot of misinterpretations do happen. And the second thing is we have seen the decision making, especially when it comes to the decision making as well. Sometimes we see that, okay, fine, it's like probably in the Western culture, decisions could probably be made in probably in one sitting or two sittings. Sometimes in the Japanese ecosystem, it goes for iterations of say 5 iterations or 10 iterations, and we see that there are no decisions that have been coming through. Probably the India side would be worried what's really been happening. But on the contrary, it's since the style itself is more of a consensus-based decision making, though we could see the water is, and I would say it's a lull over a particular period of time, but it's actually the internally where they have been interpreting or consuming the information, interpreting it, disseminating within the larger ecosystem, getting the consensus on board, and post there is a consensus is once they actually get back. And this is at the, I mean, these are some things where I feel there is a lot of cultural misunderstanding does happen, and especially the language barrier also does play. Of course, in our case, since we have English, I would say it is relatively low, but of course, still this are some of the points where we could have the misinterpretations happening. One of the key things where what we are also trying to do in these kinds of scenarios is we are actually trying to bring in cross-border mentorship. I think, in fact, the fellow panelists also talked about it. In fact, the cross-border is where who understand the cultural element of both the geos, because at the same, I mean, who understand the language nuances, who understand the cultural nuances as well. And then we have created a cross-border buddy system. That means to say, you could have your remote teams, and probably you could have a senior leader who is actually acting as a mentor, who is having an understanding of that particular cross-border cultures, and you have the remote team members also being mentored by this particular leader, and who's also probably been acting as a buddy for a certain ecosystem as well. So what has happened is this has actually helped us to bridge the gap that has been coming from these kinds of cultural misunderstandings. And in a way, since the mentorship is also happening from a senior leadership team, we are able to educate, the members how to interpret these particular cues, and how to build in that particular perseverance and the resilience as a part of one's own nurturing if one has to be part of this particular ecosystem. And that is something which I would say uh, which I myself had faced many number of times. And then, of course, it was a learning on the go. But I think by having this kind of a cross-border mentorship along with a cross-border buddy system, we have been able to circumvent many of these particular misunderstandings, and building an inculcative and educative ecosystem, and a L&D program on those particular themes as well.
Wonderful, Shaman. Thank you very much. Talking about the L&D programs, I can think of a program that we had to put together, especially with the Japanese team. And we realized that because there was a very big escalation. And there was a commitment made by one of the India employees to say, tomorrow, end of the day, you will have a resolution. And it wasn't ready. And then we were late by, I think, one night, as in instead of tomorrow evening, maybe the day after tomorrow morning is when I will have a fully baked solution was the intent. But because the committed time was over, we received a big escalation to say, I think people are not living up to the expectations, etc. So we had to put a big program together to do the customer, support team assimilation from a cultural point of view as well. So, yeah, lessons
I
that we
mean,
can learn and
absolutely,
opportunities
very
that
resonate with that. I mean, because it's the IST versus the JST. Because
correct.
I mean, Japan is 3.5 hours ahead, and when we commit, say, end of day today, is it my end of day or their end of day? I think that's subtle communication that also, I mean, I think that also attributes to your time management and the misunderstanding that can also arise out of it. And as you rightly said, escalations do arise even because of those particular time zone differences.
Yeah, sure. So before I go to the next question, I wanted to share something on my own as well, because when we were putting together this session, I think one of the questions that crossed our mind was, how do we retain the best people when the competition is just a click away? Because we are talking about borderless talent. Anybody can work from anywhere without even relocating. So the question is, how do we ensure that we retain them? And retention always is a topic on the slide for all the HR folks, I believe. So attrition or retention is definitely one element that we can't not talk about in any quarterly reviews or so. But the answer, in a way, lies, I think, is shifting our mindset from retention as a policy to retention as a relationship. Because a lot of good employees, the high performers today, they aren't looking just for the month end salary. They are looking for purpose, the autonomy and growth, especially the new workforce that's coming into the organizations joining us. It's not very dependent on the monthly check for them. I've met with people who say, I want to travel for a couple of years and then settle down with a job, or they say, I want to be an entrepreneur and then experiment with a couple of startups before I agree that I should be a regular salaried employee, etc. So, a few things that can definitely help us to ensure that we move in that relationship mindset is one can be a purpose driven work. When people feel connected to the mission, I think they are less likely to drift. So, if it is possible for us to make a connection between what an employee does and the organizational goal, or what is it that we want to create as an impact in the world, having that link established very clearly can be a very good, aspect that helps them understand what is the purpose behind the work that they do. And of course, we have been talking about career growth. Srinath gave a very good example and detail on how the career progression should be. That can include stretch roles, exposure to global projects, learning opportunities, even virtually, if not, in-person participation for all the learning programs. It kind of helps them to dream about their future. Of course, recognition and connection. We tend to often not emphasize as much in terms of acknowledgement and recognition. Sometimes it can be cultural too. We expect and we take our loved ones for granted, as they say. We hardly say thank you or I love you to our parents and family members, but it's a norm as a professional element that we want to carry forward. But yeah, I think it's important that we need to be very intentional about celebrating our wins and check-ins and acknowledgement as well as recognition too. And finally, perhaps the flexibility and trust. The biggest advantage of working across borders is I can work from wherever I want to according to my own convenience and preferences. Of course, being accessible, as Dr. Brilliant said, and being available for other team members to collaborate with you is very important. But within that scope, is it possible for us to give the freedom to work in ways that suit them? If it is not a collaboration live kind of environment, trust them and let them deliver. It kind of builds that loyalty and some of the things that can really help us to ensure that we probably move in that right direction to ensure that we talk about the retention or relationship elements with the employees. But one last question, Dr. Brilliant, I'll come back to you for this one. And after that, if we have any other questions that are coming up in the chat, we'll be happy to take a look and see how best we'll be able to address them. But Dr. Brilliant, this question is for you. In the long term, could borderless hiring unintentionally create a new form of inequality between those with reliable global connectivity and those without? Now, in terms of disability, on a very pun intended ways, they say bias against the otherwise located. If I'm not in front of you every day, the visibility aspect that you brought up earlier, is there a chance that I am ignored or I don't have the equal opportunity to grow within the organization?
चैन से सोना है तो जाग जाओ. I'm sure most of us would have seen that, a forceful person coming on television every time, warning us about it. And I think it's become a reality. The digital divide is here now. But now that will shift to what I would call as probably a skills or a career divide. And we need to ensure there is a right kind of median. Today, let's say, for example, I travel a distance of 10 kilometers. It takes me 2 hours. in a city like Mumbai. And then there is someone who's comfortably sitting at home, logging in exactly at 9 o'clock, no stress of traffic. Now, how do we make sure that there is some kind of equity that we build in? While we say traffic is saved, but look at something which I think it was Srinath who had mentioned and alluded to it, that is the Wi-Fi strong enough to support? I mean, I use a personal Wi-Fi or probably a mobile hotspot, but for work, I'll probably need to think about something much bigger, a broadband scheme, which will in fact make it equitable. I'm not saying it's equal. The shift needs to move from equal pay to equitable pay. The right kind of pay, the right kind of reimbursements, if you want to call it, so that people are enabling what I would call to drop the gap in terms of the digital divide. So then I have an option. Do I travel to office? Do I take the broadband and operate from home? The policies today, if we need to really overcome that, so-called inequality that is being feared about, is to focus on outcomes. If your policies, if your structures, if the way in which you behave are focused on outcomes, I think it will help, because reliance on real-time output as compared to visibility or not having Wi-Fi should not be the point that we should be looking at.
True.
Now, the other element, which is slightly, I would say, a cost investment kind of an approach, is can we create small hubs across the locations that we are spread in? For example, we are doing it. I have a small co-working space in Bangalore. I've taken up a small co-working space in Delhi, which was started small and now it's grown that it's about 150 seater. So the need for people to come collaborate at least once a week exists. So if we can focus on create this, this is something which can help us remove those kind of inequalities. Otherwise, as someone wisely said, a wise person, that it will always be the survival of the cheapest, not in terms of a literal sense, but the cheapest resource that is available at the highest efficiency. So today we pay top dollar to get people on board, but outcomes are not there. So when the borders are removed, and if I find a person in Jharsuguda who is able to deliver at a 10 rupee cost rather than a 100 rupee cost that I pay in Mumbai, I am willing to take that bet. So we need to remember, we need to be in charge of it. So remember the three T's: tails, tools, and touch. Have stories about how you've created that ecosystem where that borderless working is a reality, but we are still giving equity to people. Leverage all possible tools that are available thanks to AI. You don't need to think much. And most important, never forget the human touch. Wherever possible, bring that in. And I think you are able to build, a kind of an ecosystem, irrespective of how global connectivity is or the inequality that exists. While it may be intentional, non-intentional, we can overcome that. Over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brilliant, for that. I'm making a note of this, the tails, tools, and the touch. There are a lot of, elements that can really help us to move in that direction. So, and while you were explaining, I was drawing parallels to certain things that we do at Pega. We do have a special policy to sponsor internet or any other network equipment. And every quarter, we earmark one day called as the Connection Day. And that day, every quarter, is dedicated for people to come together and then celebrate. Anybody
Fantastic.
who can travel to office, we encourage them to travel to office, like commutable distance of 40, 60 kilometers, etc. Even if it is a little extra effort, they take that and then spend an entire day. But otherwise, in cities like Pune, Chennai, where we don't have offices, we have bigger offices in Hyderabad and Bangalore. But in those locations, very similar to what you talked about, we hire some space and then encourage people to come there at least for a few hours, have lunch together, take pictures, have fun, and then make those connections to help us continue to become stronger as well. So, yeah, great
Absolutely.
policies definitely show that impact. Thank you. And with that, I think we've come to the conclusion of our panel discussion from a set of questions that we wanted to ask and then learn from these esteemed panel members. I'll go another round and call them out if they would like to share a very 30-second short closing note if they will. But meanwhile, audience, if you have any questions that you would like us to answer, please do share them in the chat. I am taking a look at the chat as we speak. So far, no questions. But while they share their closing notes, if you have anything that crosses your mind, please let us know. We'll do our best to get these responses to you. So, Srinath, let me start with you. 30 seconds for any closing notes in terms of borderless talent. I believe you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you so much for a wonderful session. I would only say that building trust is by being credible, demonstrating credibility, and then seeking one out there. That is a true way to build credibility and trust. As all the very best to all the participants, a lot of learnings from my fellow panelists, and that is all I have to say now.
Thank you, Srinath. Let me go to Shamant. Any closing notes from you, sir?
Sure. I think I perfectly resonate with the trust that you've talked about. But I think the other dimension that I would like to add also is primarily respecting the cultures across the geographies. I think that's also very, very critical because especially when we are apart, and if we don't get the cultural understanding and don't build the culturally integrated ecosystem, I think that in fact fosters the trust among the geographies, and that is one thing that I too have learned as a part of my learning journey, and which I usually resonated back with the team is to have mutual respect in the cultures and have that kind of an integrated ecosystem to build the trustworthiness.
Thank you, Shamant. Dr. Brilliant, over to you. Any closing notes?
Thank you, Vivek. And I would say that people on this call and anyone who would probably see the video, don't get scared. It's about how do you make yourself future proof and ready to operate in a borderless environment. And I would ask you to look at a T. It's not just deep, but also across, which will help you. So cross-functional agility needs to be your signature USP. Second most important element, and I think World Economic Forum has spoken about it, is the ability to work and navigate ambiguity, irrespective of whether you're in India, whether in office, outside office, operating from a hotel, is is something which you need to build in. And last but not the least, it's about the tools that you need to remember. AI is here, AI is real. Leverage AI and become a master of AI. I think if you get these three right, the human touch will automatically come to you and you shall thrive in an organization which is borderless and you shall emerge top. Back to you, Vivek.
Wonderful, brilliant. I was in fact trying to think about and then say, is this the first conversation we haven't touched upon AI or brought up AI in over an hour? In the last 1 year, every and any discussion that we have tends to be, definitely leveraging the technology, etc. And then you brought it. So thank you very much for making this a very complete conversation. With that, I think we have all the conversation that we need. I saw one hand raised. I was trying to check if there is a question in the chat, but I don't see one. And I don't see the hand up anymore as well. So probably the question is answered.
I think
Hey,
it
I
has
do, I
come
do.
up now from Suhas, if I'm not wrong.
Yes,
There's
I
a
do
hand
have a
up.
hand up from Suhas. Admin, Shyam, is it possible for us to unmute and take that question? We have a few minutes.
Yes, I have given rights to Suhas.
Suhas, over to you. If you can unmute and ask your question, please.
My question to the panelist is, are we still going to be a borderless workforce thing? Because interestingly, the countries today, if you look at practically out of 230 countries, close to 160 plus countries have started talking about in-country services, in-country instead of not outsourcing work. If you see the last 18 months, the GCCs have to reduce their headcounts drastically across countries like Philippines, India, Warsaw, Guangzhou in China, almost the 4 places where the GCC were growing. They have to withdraw. rationalize the resources of the GCC and move it back into the countries. Reasons to being is the GCC setup or offshore setup was largely because of cost. But now with the AI tools coming into space, cost is no longer an issue. I mean, for example, your tier 0, tier 1, tier 2 queries are resolved by your AI. I mean, like Lena, Core AI. Some of these tools are able to address of your, queries of tier 0, tier 1, tier 2. So do I still outsource work? Do I still depend on external talent? I mean, now all the countries, look at the best economies like US, UK, are announcing that their work will be done in country first. Do it in US and make it in US or make it in UK or and make it in Germany. So do you still see this concept of borderless workforce will be appropriate in a place where AI tools is going to really capture the market?
Thank you, Suhas, for that question. Yeah, any panel members, if you would like to take a dig at it, you're welcome.
Maybe I can just add some thoughts to that. Um, I mean, totally respect the question, Mr. Swas, what you actually put across. Though I think the geographies, especially the GCC ecosystem, has been talking about the insourcing primarily. Earlier, it was the outsourcing, but now it's been more of an insourcing. But I think it also primarily resonates back into where one is on the value chain. I mean, that's an area where primarily, probably if you look at India, maybe about a decade back, and probably the kind of a captive ecosystem that we did have, and where we were more of focusing on operations, or probably we were on the little bit of on the lower value chain, then I completely agree that primarily looking at more of an insourcing, it definitely makes sense, primarily done in-house. But at the same time, when we are talking about cross borders, I think that's an area where headquarter is also leveraging on the higher value order ecosystem of the talent, and the ecosystem that is actually prevalent as a part of the GCIC is what I would call global capability and innovation centers. So once you are probably in the value chain of your product leadership and getting into becoming an innovation center, that's an area where primarily a GCIC or a GCC, where they're bringing in that particular value quotient, I think they are bound to stay. And I think still they would continue to contribute to the value ecosystem of the headquarter, or be it the cross-border ecosystems of the headquarter organizations where they're actually present. But at the same time, yes, as you did say, the insourcing is being talked about, and they probably want to localize things in the geography. But I think with the intervention of AI, as Mr. Dr. Brilliant did also talk about, I think AI is bound to be here. And I think how AI is enabling us to contribute on the higher order value chain, if one is actually part of that particular journey, I think then one need not have to fear. The cross-border ecosystem would continue to stay. And I think we would still be able to move up on the value chain. This is just
Thank
my
you,
two
Chaman.
cents. Two
To
cents for me.
add on to it, I have an opinion that, interestingly, India has not grown on the value chain of innovation. I mean, be it in the engineering side, be it in the IT software side, or be it in the product side, be it in the chemical and pharmaceutical side, because there is, I mean, last 79 years, there's been hardly three products which have been patented and in the market space side, because the entire pharma and chemical side, the China is taken over. The entire engineering side is taken over by Japan and Germany. I mean, the entire consumer product side is by, I mean, France and US and UK. Again, the innovation value chain, probably India is still weak, because that's a competency Indian students and Indian professionals got to strongly build. I mean, how to innovate. Our schools don't teach, our colleges don't teach the approaches of innovation. I mean, our colleges do teach people in terms of how to crack a paper than how to innovate on a product line. I mean, that's
But
the
Suhas,
saddest
yeah,
part in our education
uh,
system.
thank you for that line of that. It does definitely look like a larger conversation. Maybe we can ask HRAI to dig a little deeper and see if we can have a dedicated panel discussion on that. Or maybe we can connect offline. HRAI would be happy to provide our coordinates so we can probably catch up personally to ensure that we continue the conversation. We are 2 minutes beyond the scheduled time, so I would like to respect everybody who's here, the panelists as well as the participants. And with the due respect, it was definitely a very rich and insightful conversation. Thank you all the three panelists, Dr. Brilliant, Srinath, and Shaman, for sharing your own wisdom and experiences. Looking forward to continue our association and then have more learning from each other as well. And thank you all the participants for being very patient, and Suhas for asking those questions as well. Let me pass it back to Faisal with a huge thanks to HRAI again for making this session possible to close the webinar.
Thank you, Vivek, as well.
Thank you, Vivek, for skillfully steering the discussion, ensuring a seamless flow of ideas and engagement. A special thanks to our panelists. Your thought provoking perspective on embracing location agnostic talent, fostering cross cultural collaboration, and leading with empathy in a global landscape have left us inspired and better equipped to navigate the evolving world of work. For those eager to visit today's insights, the session recording is available on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. A special thanks to our event partners, Geisha, NASCOM COE, Talgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local, Ahmedabad, and India for their invaluable support in making this event a success. To learn more about these associations, please refer to the links provided in the chat. We look forward to welcoming you to our next session on the topic Gen Alpha is coming. What will the workforce look like in 2030? On August 21st, 2025. With that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you for being part of this journey. Wishing you good health, positivity, and success until we meet again. Take care and farewell for now. Thank you, Nick.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Shimon.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Faisal.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank
Take
Thank
you.
you,
care,
everyone.
everyone,
Thank you.
and happy Independence Day.
Sure.
Enjoy your
Sure.
long
Thank
Same
you.
to
weekend.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.